AITAH for being frustrated and disgusted in what my sister and BIL did, so I did something for my niece. Being an aunt has always suited me. I love my niece and nephews. And I enjoy the freedom of being the cool aunt, without the weight of parental responsibility. That might sound selfish, but it's just how I've always felt. Kids are wonderful, but the idea of having my own has never appealed to me. My husband and I are on the same page, happy with our lives as they are. Content with our careers, hobbies, and occasional visits to my sister's house for family gatherings. I get to swoop in for the fun parts and leave before the chaos starts to wear me down. My older sister, on the other hand, is fully immersed in parenthood. She has 4 kids, Legacy, who just turned 13, and the twin boys, Leon and Leo, who are 4, along with their newborn baby brother, Landon. While I adore Legacy, she's been my little partner in crime since the day she was born. I can't say I feel the same way about the twins or Landon. Maybe that makes me sound heartless. But it's hard to connect with them when all they seem to do is take up all the space and attention that should be going to Legacy. She was the firstborn, the shining star, and it feels like she's slowly been pushed into the background, forgotten in the chaos of her brothers' lives. Legacy is my homegirl. She's bright, funny, and surprisingly mature for her age. I see so much of myself in her sometimes that it hurts. When I look at her, I see a young girl who's constantly being overshadowed by the demands of the twins and now a newborn baby. She tries to be the helpful big sister, but it's obvious she's starting to feel neglected. It frustrates me because I remember what it felt like to be her age, excited about life, wanting to explore, and craving attention from the people you love. It's like my sister and her husband have forgotten that Legacy is also a kid who deserves her own moments, separate from the demands of raising toddlers and a newborn. About 2 weeks ago, my husband and I went over to my sister's house for Legacy's 13th birthday party. I had been looking forward to it for weeks because Legacy and I had talked about her plans. She was excited to finally be a teenager, and she'd invited a few of her friends from school. She'd been talking about it nonstop whenever we hung out, and I could tell how much it meant to her. 13 is a big deal, after all, and I wanted her to feel special. But when we arrived, I immediately felt like something was off. The backyard was decked out for what looked like a toddler's party, bright balloons, a ball pit, a tiny water slide, and one of those inflatable water attractions that's clearly meant for kids half Legacy's age. I was confused. This was supposed to be her party, wasn't it? Where were her friends? Why did everything look like it was set up for Leon and Leo instead? As soon as I saw Legacy's face, my heart sank. She was sitting at a picnic table, wearing a forced smile as her younger cousins ran around her, giggling and screaming. Her cousins, ages 8 to 4, were the only ones there. No friends, no girls her age to celebrate with. Just little boys running around, completely oblivious to how miserable she looked. I sat down beside her, and she whispered, "None of my friends could make it." She shrugged, trying to play it off like it didn't matter. But I could tell she was crushed. This was supposed to be her day, her celebration of finally becoming a teenager, and it had turned into a circus for little kids. I felt a surge of anger toward my sister. How could she let this happen? How could she throw a party like this and not think about how Legacy would feel? It seemed like everything was designed to entertain the younger kids, and Legacy had been completely forgotten in the process. The party was more for Leon, Leo, and the other cousins than for her. But that wasn't even the worst part. As the party went on, I noticed that my sister had basically put Legacy in charge of her brothers. Every time one of them needed something, it was Legacy who stepped in to help. She was expected to take care of them, even at her own birthday party. I watched as she helped Leo out of the ball pit, made sure Leon didn't spill his juice, and even held baby Landon while my sister mingled with the other moms. It was infuriating. This was supposed to be her day, and yet she was playing the role of babysitter. I glanced over at my husband, who was standing by the grill, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. He caught my eye and raised an eyebrow, clearly sharing my frustration. This wasn't right. Legacy deserved better than this. The final straw came when it was time for the birthday cake. My sister had ordered a basic sheet cake, The kind you'd get for a first birthday. One candle. Just one. Legacy sat there, waiting for her moment. But before she could even blow out the candle, my sister gathered all the younger kids and told them to blow it out together. I watched in disbelief as a swarm of toddlers leaned over and blew out the candle, while Legacy sat there, looking stunned. I was fuming. I wanted to scream. How could my sister not see how wrong this was? Legacy didn't even get to blow out her own candle. She didn't get her moment. It was as if she didn't matter. And I could see the hurt written all over her face. That was it for me. I couldn't take it anymore. I told my husband we were leaving. And without saying goodbye to anyone, we left the party. As we drove home, I made a decision. If my sister couldn't give Legacy the birthday she deserved, I would. By the time we got home from that nightmare of a party, I was still fuming. How could my sister throw a party like that and think it was okay? It was Legacy's 13th birthday. And instead of celebrating her transition into her teenage years, she was saddled with babysitting duties and a cake fit for a toddler. The whole thing felt like one big slap in the face. And I couldn't let it go. My husband and I sat down in the kitchen. And he could see how upset I was. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked. Already knowing my answer. Talk about what? The fact that Legacy didn't even get to blow out her own candle? Or maybe the fact that my sister basically had her acting like the party nanny the whole time? I was venting. But I couldn't help it. The more I replayed the party in my head, the angrier I got. She's 13. This was supposed to be her day. My husband nodded sympathetically, understanding where I was coming from. He's always been good at listening. Especially when I'm worked up like this. You're right. It wasn't fair. She deserved more. I stood up and started pacing, trying to figure out what I could do. Legacy deserved so much better than what she got. I knew my sister was overwhelmed with 3 young boys. But that didn't excuse how badly she'd handled the party. Legacy was her daughter, and she deserved to be celebrated, not sidelined. The more I thought about it, the more determined I became. We need to do something, I said, stopping mid-pace. I'm not letting her birthday end like this. She deserves a real celebration. Something that's just for her. My husband nodded again, this time with more enthusiasm. I agree. But what do you have in mind? I wasn't entirely sure yet. But I knew one thing for certain. It had to be special. Something that made Legacy feel seen, valued, and, most importantly, celebrated. I didn't want her to remember her 13th birthday as the day she was ignored by her own family. I wanted her to have a memory she could cherish. One that was just for her. Let's do a surprise sleepover, I said, the idea forming in my head as I spoke. But not like a regular sleepover. We'll move all the furniture in one of the rooms. Set up blankets, pillows, squishmallows, everything. We'll make it cozy, fun, and totally for her. No boys, just me, her, and maybe one of her best friends. We'll have snacks, nail polish, girly pajamas, the works. My husband smiled. I like it. And what about the next day? We could take her and her friends out for a day of fun. Something she actually wants to do. I could feel my excitement growing. Yes, we could take her skating. She's been wanting to go for months. And she deserves a day that's all about her. Without having to worry about her brothers. The plan was falling into place. And for the first time all day, I felt hopeful. I knew Legacy had been let down by her mom. But I wasn't going to let that be the lasting memory of her 13th birthday. She deserved a celebration that was all about her. One where she didn't have to share the spotlight or take care of anyone else. We started making a list of everything we'd need. Blankets, pillows, squishmallows, snacks, Legacy's favorite ones, of course. I even planned to get a bunch of nail polish and set up a mini nail salon in the living room so we could do manicures. I could already picture the look on her face when she walked in and saw everything. She was going to love it. As we brainstormed more ideas, I couldn't help but feel a bit of guilt for how things had gone at the party. I knew my sister was trying her best. But she had completely missed the mark with Legacy. Her heart was in the right place. But that didn't make up for how overshadowed Legacy had been by her brothers. I knew it wasn't my place to parent Legacy. But I also couldn't stand by and do nothing when I saw how hurt she was. The next step was getting in touch with Legacy. I sent her a quick text. Hey homegirl. I know today wasn't what you wanted. How about a do-over this weekend? Sleepover at my place? I waited for her response. And when my phone pinged a minute later, I saw her reply. OMG yes. That was all the confirmation I needed. I texted her back, telling her to invite one of her best friends. And that we'd have a night of fun just for her. No little brothers. No interruptions. Just a celebration for Legacy. I could practically feel her excitement through the phone. And it made me even more determined to make sure everything was perfect. By the end of the night, my husband and I had a solid plan in place. We'd move the furniture the next day and get everything set up for the surprise sleepover. Then, the following day, we'd take Legacy and her friends out for a fun-filled day of skating, lunch, and maybe even a trip to the arcade. It was going to be the birthday celebration she deserved. And I couldn't wait to see the smile on her face. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. My sister may not have given Legacy the birthday she deserved, but I was going to make sure she got one. Legacy was more than just a big sister or a helper to her mom. She was a teenager. And she deserved to be celebrated like one. This sleepover and day of fun were going to be all about her. And I knew it would be a memory she'd treasure for years to come. And most importantly, she'd know that someone saw her. Someone cared enough to make her feel special. And that was worth everything to me. The next day, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't going to let Legacy's 13th birthday be remembered as a disappointment. I knew it would take a bit of effort, but it was worth it to give her the special celebration she deserved. My husband and I spent the morning moving furniture around to create a cozy, fun space for the sleepover. We cleared out the guest room, rearranged everything to make it feel more like a teen haven, and brought in extra pillows, blankets, and squishmallows that we'd picked up from the store. Once the room was ready, it looked like something straight out of a Pinterest board. Soft lighting, fluffy pillows, a pile of cozy blankets, and plenty of space for Legacy and her best friend to lounge around and feel comfortable. We even set up a little corner with nail polish, face masks, and snacks so they could have a mini spa night. I could already picture the girls hanging out, laughing, and just being teenagers without having to worry about babysitting duties or little kids interrupting. As I was setting out the snacks, Legacy's favorite chips, candies, and popcorn, I couldn't help but feel a bit of nervous excitement. I wanted this night to be perfect for her. After everything she went through at that party, she deserved to feel special and celebrated. It wasn't just about the birthday itself, it was about showing her that she mattered. That her joy and happiness were important. And that she didn't have to constantly play second fiddle to her younger brothers. Around 5 p.m., my husband left to pick up Legacy and her best friend, Maya. I could feel my anticipation building as I did the final touches. I checked the nail polish colors one last time and made sure the blankets were arranged just right. I wanted Legacy to walk in and feel like the whole night had been planned with her in mind. About 30 minutes later, I heard the door open, and the sound of Legacy's excited voice filled the hallway. "Auntie, where are you?" she called out. "I'm in here, homegirl," I replied, standing in the doorway of the guest room, ready to see her reaction. When Legacy and Maya walked in, their eyes lit up, and they both squealed in excitement. Legacy ran straight over to the pile of squishmallows and threw herself into the blankets, giggling like the teenager she was. "Oh my gosh, this is amazing," she exclaimed. "How did you do all this?" I couldn't help but smile. "I wanted you to have a birthday celebration that was all about you. No little kids, no babysitting duties, just fun." Maya looked just as excited. "This is so cool, thank you for inviting me." I waved it off. "You two deserve it. Now, get comfy, and let's get this sleepover started." We spent the evening doing everything Legacy had missed out on at her actual birthday party. We painted our nails in all sorts of fun colors, watched cheesy teen movies, and stuffed ourselves with junk food. Legacy and Maya laughed, joked around, and seemed genuinely happy. The whole night felt like the kind of carefree, fun experience a 13-year-old should have on her birthday. And I was just glad to be a part of it. At one point during the night, Legacy pulled me aside and hugged me tightly. Thank you for this, Auntie. I didn't even know how much I needed this. Her words hit me hard. She wasn't just thanking me for the sleepover, she was thanking me for seeing her. For making her feel important. I hugged her back and said, "You're welcome, homegirl, you deserve it." It was moments like that that made me realize just how much Legacy had been holding in. She had spent so much time being the good, big sister. The responsible one, the helper, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be celebrated just for being herself. Seeing her so happy, so carefree, made all the effort worth it. The sleepover went late into the night, with the girls staying up to gossip, paint their nails, and laugh over silly TikToks. I let them enjoy themselves, knowing that this was a night they'd remember for a long time. It wasn't about the flashy decorations or extravagant gifts, it was about feeling seen, feeling valued, and having a space where Legacy could just be a kid again. The next morning, my husband and I had another surprise planned. After a leisurely breakfast, we packed the girls into the car and headed out for a day of fun. Legacy had been dying to go skating for months, so we took them to the local roller rink. As soon as we arrived, Legacy's face lit up with excitement. "This is awesome. I've been wanting to come here forever," she said, grabbing Maya's hand and pulling her toward the rink. My husband and I sat back and watched as the girls skated around, laughing and racing each other. It was exactly the kind of fun Legacy had been missing out on. No distractions, no little brothers to look after, just her and her best friend enjoying themselves. After a couple of hours of skating, we took them out to lunch at their favorite burger place, where we stuffed ourselves with greasy fries and milkshakes. The entire day was filled with laughter and smiles. And for the first time in a long time, Legacy looked genuinely happy. It was like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, and I could see the carefree teenager she had been longing to be. By the time we dropped her and Maya back home, she was practically glowing. As we drove back to our house, my husband glanced over at me and smiled. "That went pretty well, don't you think?" I nodded, feeling a sense of satisfaction. It went better than I could have hoped. She needed this. I'm glad we did it. In the end, it wasn't just about the sleepover or the day out, it was about showing Legacy that she mattered. That she wasn't just a helper or a babysitter for her brothers, but a young girl who deserved to have fun and be celebrated. It wasn't something extravagant or over the top, but it was exactly what she needed, and I was happy to be the one to give it to her. As we pulled into the driveway, I couldn't help but smile to myself. I knew my sister and her husband might not be thrilled with how I handled things, but I didn't care. Legacy was happy, and that was all that mattered to me. Sometimes, you have to step in and be the responsible adult when others drop the ball. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. The next morning, I woke up with the same excitement I used to feel as a kid on the morning of a field trip. I knew today was going to be special, not just for Legacy, but for all of us. My husband and I had planned a day out that would give her the fun and attention she deserved. Far from the chaos of her everyday life, the skating rink was the first stop, and I could already imagine her face lighting up when we got there. After we had breakfast, simple pancakes and fruit. Nothing too fancy since we knew we'd be stuffing ourselves later with burgers and fries, we got ready. I packed a bag with extra socks, water bottles, and snacks just in case the girls got hungry on the way. As we finished up, Legacy and Maya were already buzzing with excitement. It was like they couldn't believe they were actually going skating, especially after the disaster of the original birthday party. When we got into the car, the energy was contagious. Legacy and Maya were talking a mile a minute in the back seat, already planning who would win the imaginary race they had concocted for when they hit the rink. My husband was driving, and every now and then he'd glance at me with a knowing smile, as if to say, this is what she needed. When we pulled into the skating rink, Legacy practically jumped out of the car before we even came to a full stop. "Oh my God, Auntie, this is going to be so much fun," she squealed, grabbing Maya's hand and pulling her toward the entrance. The rink itself wasn't anything special, a local spot with old-school disco lights and faded posters of skaters on the walls, but to Legacy, it was paradise. She'd been talking about going skating for months. And I knew how badly she'd wanted to go. But it always got brushed aside by my sister. There was always something more important. Like taking the twins to a birthday party or the fact that Landon needed constant care. It was easy to overlook Legacy when there were younger, more demanding kids in the house. But today was all about her. The girls laced up their skates as fast as they could. And within minutes, they were out on the rink. Wobbling at first but quickly finding their balance. My husband and I sat on the sidelines, watching them zoom past us, laughing and racing each other like they didn't have a care in the world. For the first time in a long time, Legacy looked like a regular teenager, free, happy, and full of life. I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride watching her. This was the kind of experience she deserved. Not being stuck at home with the responsibility of looking after her brothers. She needed a break, a moment to just be a kid. And I was so glad we could give that to her. At one point, she skated over to where we were sitting, out of breath but grinning ear to ear. "This is the best day ever," she said, throwing her arms around me in a tight hug. "Thank you for this, Auntie. I've never had so much fun." Her words made my heart swell. This wasn't just about skating or going out to eat, it was about showing her that she mattered. That someone saw her, recognized her, and wanted her to be happy. After about an hour of skating, we decided it was time for the next part of our adventure, lunch at her favorite burger place. The girls were still buzzing with energy as they piled into the car, recounting their mini races and who won, even though it was pretty clear they were just having fun and not keeping score. We pulled into the small diner not far from the rink, the kind of place that serves greasy fries in baskets and milkshakes so thick you can barely sip through the straw. It was one of Legacy's favorite spots. And I could see why. There was something comforting about the laid-back vibe and the smell of sizzling burgers on the grill. As soon as we sat down, Legacy immediately launched into her order: double cheeseburger, extra fries, and a chocolate milkshake. Maya followed suit, and my husband and I exchanged knowing looks. This was the kind of day we all needed. A moment to indulge and just enjoy each other's company. The conversation over lunch was lighthearted and full of laughter. The girls talked about school, their favorite movies, and the latest TikTok trends I couldn't keep up with. It felt like a break from the heaviness that had been hanging over Legacy ever since that awful birthday party. Here, she wasn't overshadowed by her brothers or bogged down by the responsibilities that came with being the oldest sibling. She was just Legacy, a fun-loving 13-year-old, enjoying burgers and fries with her friends. After lunch, we decided to keep the fun going by taking the girls to an arcade nearby. It wasn't part of the original plan, but I could tell they weren't ready for the day to end just yet. The arcade was loud, full of flashing lights and the sound of video games beeping and buzzing. But the girls were in heaven. They darted from game to game, collecting tickets for prizes that probably wouldn't last more than a few days. But that didn't matter. They were having the time of their lives. By the time we finally left the arcade, the sun was beginning to set, and I could see the exhaustion starting to set in. The girls were still giggling in the back seat, but their energy had shifted to that kind of contented tiredness that comes after a full day of fun. My husband and I exchanged another glance, both of us feeling a sense of accomplishment. As we dropped Legacy and Maya back at home, Legacy gave me another big hug. "Thank you for everything, Auntie. This was the best birthday ever." I smiled and hugged her back. "You deserved it, homegirl. Anytime you need a break, you know where to find me." We said our goodbyes, and as we drove home, I couldn't help but reflect on the day. It wasn't about the skating or the burgers or the arcade games. It was about giving Legacy the space to be herself, to feel seen and celebrated. It was about showing her that she mattered, and that she didn't have to always put her brother's needs ahead of her own. When we finally pulled into our driveway, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Legacy had needed this day. And so had I. We had given her the birthday she deserved. And in doing so, we'd reminded her that she wasn't just the big sister or the responsible one, she was Legacy. A bright, funny, and deserving young girl who had every right to be celebrated. As we settled in for the night, I knew that the next time my sister threw another half-hearted party for Legacy, I'd be ready to step in again. Because sometimes, being the responsible adult means knowing when to give a child the attention and love they truly need. And I'd do it for Legacy 1,000 times over. The next day, as expected, I got a call from my sister. I knew it was coming. Word must have gotten back to her that we'd taken Legacy out for her real birthday celebration. And she wasn't going to be happy about it. I let the phone ring a couple of times before picking up, mentally bracing myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. "Hey," I said, trying to sound neutral. "What the hell? My name." My sister's voice was sharp, more annoyed than I had anticipated. "Why didn't you tell me you were taking Legacy out for another party? You didn't even ask." I sighed, leaning against the kitchen counter, already feeling the frustration bubbling up. "Because it wasn't about you. Sister's name. It was about Legacy. She deserved a birthday that was actually for her, not one that was all about the boys." "That's not fair," she snapped back. "She had a party. She didn't need another one. You made it seem like I didn't do enough for her." "You didn't." I couldn't hold back any longer. "That party you threw was a disaster. And you know it. You had a ball pit for 4-year-olds. A tiny cake with one candle that her brothers blew out. And on top of that, you made her take care of the boys the whole time. She didn't get to enjoy any of it." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could tell my sister was stewing, trying to come up with a defense. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter, but still defensive. "It wasn't that bad. She didn't complain. She never complains. That's the problem." "Sister's name," I said, softening my tone a bit. "Legacy never complains because she's so used to being put on the back burner. She's the oldest, so she always has to take care of the younger kids. And you've gotten used to relying on her. But she's 13 now. She's a teenager, not a built-in babysitter. She needs to feel important too." I could hear my sister sigh on the other end of the line. But she wasn't ready to let it go. "I don't see why you couldn't have included the boys in your little outing. It feels like you're trying to make a point. And it's not fair to exclude them." "It wasn't about excluding them," I said firmly. "It was about giving Legacy a day that was just for her. She's constantly surrounded by little kids. And for once, she deserved to be the focus. She deserved to have fun without having to worry about her brothers." "She loves her brothers," my sister said, but her voice lacked the conviction it had earlier. "I'm not saying she doesn't," I replied, trying to keep my frustration in check. "But she's not their mother. And it's not her job to always take care of them. She needed a break, and that's what we gave her." There was another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in my sister's head as she processed what I was saying. I hoped she would come around. That she would realize I wasn't trying to undermine her as a mother, but rather give Legacy something she desperately needed: attention and care, without the constant responsibility of being the oldest sibling. "Look," I continued after a moment, "I'm not trying to overstep. But you have to see how this is affecting her. She's a teenager now. She needs time for herself. Time to be with her friends. And to feel like her birthday is about her. Not about the twins or the baby. What we did wasn't a dig at you. It was for her." My sister sighed again, this time sounding more tired than angry. "I don't know. My name. I'm doing the best I can. It's hard with 3 little ones. I rely on Legacy a lot. I know that, but I never thought she felt pushed aside." I softened even more, hearing the exhaustion in her voice. "I get it. I know it's not easy. And I'm not saying you're a bad mom. You're juggling a lot. But Legacy is growing up. And she's at that age where she needs to feel like she's important too. It can't always be about the boys." There was a long silence on the other end, and I wondered if my words were getting through. Finally, my sister spoke, her voice quieter now. "I guess I didn't realize it was that bad. I thought she was okay with everything." "She's not going to tell you," I said gently, "but it's pretty obvious when you look at her. She's trying to be the good big sister. But she's still a kid. And she needs to be treated like one sometimes." Another pause. Then, "Okay, I get it. I'll try to be better about giving her space." I could feel a sense of relief wash over me. This wasn't a victory, but it was a step in the right direction. My sister was listening, and that was all I could hope for. "Thank you," I said softly. "She just needs a little more attention." That's all. She's a great kid. And she deserves to feel special too. I'll talk to her, my sister said, her tone more thoughtful now. And, thanks for doing what you did for her. I might not have liked how you went about it. But I can see you had her best interests at heart. You're welcome, I replied. She means a lot to me. You know? I know, she said. I'll do better. I promise. We hung up shortly after that. And I felt a mix of emotions, relief, hope, and maybe a little guilt. I didn't regret what I'd done for Legacy. But I also understood that my sister was doing the best she could with what she had. It wasn't easy raising 4 kids. And while she dropped the ball on Legacy's birthday, I could see that she wasn't intentionally neglecting her. She just needed a reminder that Legacy was growing up and needed her own space to thrive. Later that evening, I got a text from Legacy. Thanks again, Auntie. Yesterday was the best. I'll never forget it. I smiled, knowing that no matter what fallout came from the situation, I had done the right thing. Legacy felt seen, heard, and loved, and that was all that mattered. As I sat down with my husband that night, I told him about the conversation with my sister. He listened quietly, nodding along as I recounted the call. When I finished, he looked at me with a small smile. You did good, he said simply. I leaned back against the couch, feeling a sense of peace. Yeah, I think so too. In the end, it wasn't about whether I had stepped on anyone's toes or caused a bit of tension in the family. It was about Legacy. She was the priority, and seeing her happy, knowing she felt special, that was worth everything. And if my sister needed more reminders along the way, well, I'd be there to give them. Because Legacy deserved nothing less. A few days after my conversation with my sister, things seemed to settle down. I didn't hear much from her. But Legacy sent me texts here and there, thanking me again for the weekend. Every time I saw her messages pop up, I felt a little spark of happiness. It wasn't about getting recognition or praise, it was about knowing that I'd made a difference in her life. Even if it was in just this small way. My sister, on the other hand, was quiet. I wasn't sure if she was still processing our conversation or just busy with the chaos of raising 3 little boys. But I didn't push her for more. I'd said what needed to be said. And now it was up to her to take it to heart. I hoped she would start to see that Legacy wasn't just her helper, or the big sister who could be relied on for everything. She was her own person. And she needed space to grow, to be herself, and to enjoy her teenage years. One evening, about a week after the sleepover, I got a phone call from Legacy. It wasn't her usual quick text or message, this time. She wanted to talk. Hey, homegirl, what's up? I asked, settling onto the couch and turning down the TV so I could focus on her. I just wanted to say thanks again for everything, she said, her voice soft but sincere. You didn't have to do any of it. But you did. And it made me feel really special. I smiled, feeling my heart warm at her words. Of course, Legacy, you deserve to feel special. You're not just a big sister. You know, you're your own person. And sometimes it's nice to have a break from everything. There was a pause on the other end. And then she said something that took me by surprise. Mom and I talked. After you talked to her. She's been trying to give me more space. She even said she'd take me and my friends out for lunch next weekend. Just us. I blinked, processing what she was saying. My sister had actually listened. She was making an effort to show Legacy that she mattered. That her needs weren't being overlooked. That's great, Legacy. I'm really happy to hear that. You deserve it. Yeah, I mean, I know she's trying. It's just different. I didn't think she'd really get it. But she's been better lately. I leaned back against the cushions, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. My sister had heard me. And more importantly, she'd heard Legacy. Maybe this would be a turning point for them. A chance for my sister to see Legacy for who she really was. A young girl who needed her mom's attention, love, and validation. I'm glad she's trying, I said. And if you ever need anything, you know I'm always here for you. I know, Auntie, Legacy replied. You've always been there for me. Her words hit me in a way I hadn't expected. I'd always tried to be a good aunt. But hearing her say that made me realize just how much of an impact I'd had on her life. In a way, it was bittersweet. I was happy to be that person for her. But at the same time, I wished she didn't need someone else to step in and fill the gaps. I wanted her to have everything she needed from her parents. Especially from my sister. We talked for a little while longer before saying goodbye. And when I hung up the phone, I sat in the quiet of my living room, reflecting on everything that had happened. This wasn't just about a birthday party or a sleepover. It was about something deeper, Legacy finding her voice, standing up for herself in subtle ways, and learning that it was okay to ask for what she needed. As I sat there, I couldn't help but think back to my own teenage years. They hadn't been easy either. I had been the responsible one in my family too. The one who took care of things when my parents were busy or stressed. I knew what it was like to be overlooked. To feel like your needs didn't matter as much as those of others. Maybe that was why I felt so strongly about stepping in for Legacy, because I saw a little bit of myself in her. But there was a difference. I had never had someone to step in for me. I had to navigate those feelings on my own, learning the hard way that it was okay to take up space. To ask for what I wanted. To demand to be seen. With Legacy, I wanted to make sure she didn't have to do it alone. I wanted her to know that she had someone in her corner, cheering her on, even when things got tough. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Legacy was going to keep growing, keep learning to stand up for herself. And I'd be there every step of the way. But more than that, I hoped my sister would continue to see the changes that needed to happen. I hoped she'd keep making the effort to show Legacy that she was just as important as her brothers. That her needs weren't secondary just because she was older. It wasn't going to be easy. Change never is. But for the first time in a while, I felt hopeful. Legacy was finding her way. And my sister was starting to see what I had seen all along. Legacy was more than just the big sister. More than just a helper. She was a young girl with dreams, desires, and a need to be loved for who she was. Not just what she could do for others. In the end, that's all any of us really want, to be seen, to be heard, and to know that we matter. As I drifted off to sleep, I knew that no matter what happened next, I would always be there for Legacy. Because that's what family does. We show up, we support, and when necessary, we fight for the people we love. Even when it's hard, even when it means stepping on toes. Because in the end, love isn't about being perfect, it's about being there when it matters most. And for Legacy, I'd always be there.